Welcome into the Inside Scoop. We are live from Nashville, Tennessee. Today is Wednesday, September 10th, and I'm your host, Josh Newberg. We got a huge slate of games this weekend, which also means we have a huge slate of recruiting visits this weekend. We are going to break it all down, but first, hit subscribe to that Rivals Recruits channel. This is the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. So, loaded show today. As I said, Sam Spiegelman's going to be on talking a little LSU. Matt Ray talking Tennessee. Also, Pete Nakos on the highest paid wide receivers in the country. And Charles Power breaks down breakout freshmen. Huge show, but first, we're talking major recruiting developments across the college football world. And this weekend, we got 5-star weekend at Rocky Top. That's where we are starting, because the recruit section inside Neyland Stadium on Saturday will be at capacity as number 15 Tennessee takes on number 6 Georgia in this rivalry game. And hasn't been much of a rivalry lately because UGA has won 8 straight coming into this one. But I'll tell you what, there is a buzz in the air in Knoxville. And guess what? Just now, I got my hands on the visit list. Right here. Steve Wiltfong just published it, and it is loaded. We got names that you need to know. We will start with a bunch of big-time commitments. We'll be there. Almost all of Tennessee's 2026 class will be there, headlined by Faison Brandon, Tristan Keys, Celeste Moa, Joel Wyatt. The list goes on. Also some important flip targets, including Virginia Tech defensive line commit Andrew Rogers. His mom says he will be there, according to Steve Wiltfong. And Steve confirmed some top names in the 2027 class as well. The number 1 overall in the 27 cycle, offensive tackle Kennedy Brown. He's going to be there, and his mom says they're coming in on Friday. Number 1 linebacker Cooper Witten. Number 3 running back David Gabriel Georges. Number 1 player in the state of Virginia in the 27 cycle, Chris Whitehead. The number 2 linebacker in America, Donovan Moore. There will be also top recruits from the 2028 cycle as well. I don't need to give you those names yet. We'll cover that later. But it is a huge weekend, and it would be even bigger with a Tennessee win over Georgia. Like I said, off the charts talent in Knoxville this weekend. It's going to be a theme on this channel for the next several days. All right. Other big news this week. Oklahoma capitalizes on that big win over Michigan. Already a commitment, 2027 4-star Damari Dezern, he committed. And he committed right here on this channel, which is why you need to be subscribed. You never know when we're going to go live, so hit subscribe. All right, so he visited Oklahoma over the weekend, and heading into his visit, it was pretty cool on that commitment. You could hear him say UCLA was his leader coming in. The visit was so good. Not only did Oklahoma jump into the lead, he commits to the Sooners 3 days later. And that's not it. Predictions are rolling in for the Sooners to land its top quarterback target as well. Peyton Houston in the 27 class is 6 days away from his commitment. He visited last weekend, and like I said, predictions, they've been rolling in. So much more to come for Oklahoma. That's what a big win at home can do for you. All right, LSU, important visits this weekend. Last weekend, it was quarterback Landon Duckworth that headlined it. This weekend, another quarterback coming in. This time it's Peyton Houston. He will be on campus. As I said, he's leaning toward Oklahoma, but we know how important visits can be. Leaning Oklahoma heading in. Will he still be leaning Oklahoma coming out of this LSU visit as the Tigers? They take on the Gators this weekend, and 3 of their top 4 quarterback targets from the 27 class will be on campus. Houston is one of them, but also Colton Nussmeier and Elijah Haven are the other 2 that are expected in. So, even more big names for 27, 28 as well. This is a big opportunity for LSU recruiting. We'll see what they can do against the Florida Gators. Let's head down to Florida, where Miami top QB target is visiting. Canes take on USF Bulls. Watch out for those Bulls, but the Canes are set to host their number 1 quarterback target in the 2027 cycle. He's an athletic dual threat from Alabaster, Alabama, Thompson High School, number 17 ranked quarterback in the 2027 class. Trent Seaborn will be in Miami this weekend as the Bulls, they take their show on the road to Miami, but the Canes, they got off to a great start this season, already beating Notre Dame at home. So this weekend, though, Not a huge visit weekend in terms of numbers for Miami. Remember, next weekend they will host the Florida Gators, and that sideline is going to be packed. But this weekend, it's all about giving that attention to Trent Seaborn. Remember, quarterbacks in the 2027 cycle, they are falling like dominoes. It's time to strike, and Miami has their shot this weekend. So those are the biggest recruiting developments that I'm following. Did I miss any? Let me know, comment section below. We got to talk a little volunteer recruiting because Tennessee fans aren't the only thing that'll be loaded on Saturday afternoon. So will the recruiting section inside of Neyland. It is expected to be a huge recruiting event, one of the biggest we've seen in Knoxville. So we're going to break it down with Matt Ray from VolQuest. We are talking 5-star recruiting. But first, Tennessee fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. I am fired up for this weekend. So let's go jump on board. We're talking Tennessee recruiting all season long. Hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in Matt Ray. Matt, we know it's going to be a capacity showing for number 15 versus number 6, Georgia. Georgia, though, 8 straight wins coming into this one, but I swear there's a buzz in the air right now in Knoxville. I think it's going to be a big one. So why is it so important? Like, I'm looking at this visit list now. Faison Brennan, Tristan Keys, Celeste Moa, Joel Wyatt. A lot of the commits are showing up for this one. Why is it so important to get these guys back on campus?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you just look at the class that Tennessee's built, surged into the top 10 here as we've started the fall. Yeah. It's just important to be back around those guys. I mean, some of those guys haven't been here since June. They've had their season start. So you just want to get those guys back around campus, let them continue to build that bond with the staff, remind them why they committed, and, allow those guys to have some more chances just to get to know each other a little bit, right? I mean, Celeste Moa and Tristan Keys are going to line up in the same wide receiver room, but probably haven't had a chance to meet each other yet. So I think from the camaraderie standpoint, it's really good for Tennessee to have those guys back and allow some of those guys to experience a big game inside of Neyland. Legend Bay is going to get that chance. Celeste Moa is going to get that chance. Faison Brandon, Tristan Keys, some of these routine guys that have been here for the past, year visiting at different times have had a chance to do that. But I just think from the camaraderie standpoint, it's huge for Tennessee to be able to allow them to continue building their bond with the staff and to build that bond with each other. This is a class that Faison Brandon has had a heavy hand in helping to build. Yeah. And it's a weekend for him to kind of look around and see those weapons around him and then those offensive line guys in front of him. And then they have a chance to peer recruit some other guys and talk them through what led them to their decision as a part of this 2026 class, as Tennessee has a big chance to make a move for guys in 2027.
Yeah. Faison Brandon, kind of like the face of this class for Tennessee, so it makes sense for him to be there, kind of represent. He's the bell cow of this class. Yeah. When we talk 2026 additions for Tennessee, it's mostly going to be flips because almost every recruit in the top 300 is committed somewhere. And one of the top flip targets on campus this weekend is Virginia Tech defensive line commit Andrew Rogers. He says he'll be there. Obviously, the trenches are always an important position to need. Do you think there could be any other flip targets by the time we get to kickoff on campus?
Well, I think we've learned with these big games from Tennessee over the past couple of years that you never know who's going to show up, especially these later afternoon games, right? I mean, the last 2 cycles, they've done a really nice job of getting some guys in that nobody knew beforehand. So, I think this is one of those weekends where you just say, again, you never know who's going to show up. I certainly think that there's a chance that you see some guys show up. Tennessee's obviously going to have an invite out to some guys that they missed on and are going to continue to recruit to the finish line. And I think that's one of the most exciting parts of this weekend overall, is you just never know who's going to show up.
Yeah. And that's why we check VolQuest all weekend long. You guys do a phenomenal job of constantly keeping things updated. Also this weekend, we're going to see some really powerful 2027 names, including the number 1 overall player in the 27 class, offensive tackle Kennedy Brown, number 1 linebacker Cooper Witten. We know that's a big target for Tennessee. Number 3 running back in America, Ohio State, Tennessee battling over David Gabriel, Georgia. So also 2028, I know it sounds crazy to mention 2028, but even like with David Sanders, Tennessee didn't win David Sanders on signing day. No, they won David Sanders a year and a half, 2 years before. Well, at least that's when they started laying the groundwork for David Sanders. So How important is it to get these guys in this environment this early in their recruitments? Let's talk game time. All of a sudden, the college and NFL seasons are upon us, but guess what? We need our tickets, and getting deals on last-minute tickets can be frustrating when all you want is to be there for the moment your team runs out onto the field, and the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing tickets, experiences, and it only takes a few taps. The app's incredibly easy to use, and the Game Time guarantee, it means you can trust that you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Plus, fees are always included. So, what you see is what you pay. That's why I use the Game Time app. It's super simple, and it makes the experience of buying great seats a breeze. I've even seen NFL tickets on there as low as $100. So, Game Time makes it easy to find and buy NFL tickets and tickets for every kind of event in your area. Also, the Game Time lowest price guarantee. It's where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference to guarantee you're getting the lowest price. All right, here's what we're going to do. You're going to take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code INSIDESCOOP. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's INSIDESCOOP for 20% off.
Yeah, it's huge, especially for those younger guys that maybe haven't had a chance to experience something like this in the 2028 class. And Tennessee's got some guys in the 2028 class that are probably going to stay inside of that top 50, top 75 nationally throughout. So I think you can really lay some groundwork with those guys and say, hey, come back, experience this again, be around us a little bit more. And for those guys especially, I mean, Tennessee can't have direct contact with them. They can't initiate that direct contact. Other schools obviously are following those same guidelines. So to have those guys on campus and to get some FaceTime with them is just as important as well. But with these 2027s, I mean, some of these guys have started to experience that. And if you're Tennessee, this is one of those couple of games this fall that you really have, as Josh Heupel likes to say, showcase your brand of football. You have that chance this weekend. And, I think you mentioned 3 guys, and there's just so many there. And obviously, starting with Kennedy Brown, this is a chance for Tennessee to get a really good foot in the door, put their best foot forward, getting him out here. He's making the trip, and you have a chance to try to solidify yourself into a spot to get a visit in the winter or in the spring, and then work to get one of those official visits later in the process for the prospect who is the number 1 player overall in the Rivals rankings currently. And then obviously Cooper Witten, a guy that we highlighted this week along with Chad Simmons on our weekly recruiting show, Trail Tidbits. It's big for him to get out here. I think Tennessee's continued to do a lot of things well in that recruitment for the Vol legacy. He was out here at the end of the summer for the Big Orange Barbecue. Came out on his own. It was his first chance to just kind of get to experience Tennessee outside of everything that he knows it as, which is his dad's legacy. And I think Tennessee had a really good visit there. It'll be good for them to get him back to campus this weekend, as that's going to be, a pretty big national recruiting battle with schools like Clemson, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and numerous others competing with Tennessee in that race. And then David Gabriel Georges is a guy that if you read over at VolQuest, everybody already wants to know. And I said this in one of our recruiting 3-2-1s. There's just guys in each cycle. In the last cycle, it was David Sanders. This cycle, it was Tristan Keys and Faison Brent. There's just guys that fan bases tend to hone in on. And it feels like, to me, early on, for the Tennessee fan base, that's David Gabriel Georges in the 2027 cycle. Tennessee continuing to make the most of the proximity of having him nearby in Chattanooga, getting him back to campus this weekend along with some of his teammates who are already committed. So it's big for them in that regard as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can feel the battle lines being drawn. 2027 recruiting is here. I mean, we're not even looking ahead. Like, decisions are being made. It's here. It's fun. It's happening. So we will see. It's going to be great to hear some of the response, especially if Tennessee wins this one. We know the talent is off the charts in Knoxville very often. I mean, Josh Heupel and his recruiting staff know how to put on some recruiting events, but this weekend is certainly a showcase. Is this one of the biggest recruiting weekends in the Josh Heupel era, at least in season? We know summer's a little different, but in season?
Yeah, I think where we're at right now, this rivals, potentially being one of the best, if not the best, recruiting weekends for
Yeah.
Tennessee in the Josh Heupel era. Just when you look at the collection of talent across the board, I mean, there's so many rivals 300 guys from 2026 commits to inside the 2027 class, early standouts in the 2028 class. It's a pretty massive weekend for Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen them capitalize on these weekends in the past, and they're going to look to do it again.
All right, Tennessee fans, talk to us about this game. I don't want your predictions. I don't need to hear who you think is going to win. I want you to put in the comment section, how many points does Tennessee win by on Saturday? Let us know. We got to talk a little LSU recruiting because this week in the Bayou, it is the biggest game of the weekend. At least in my book, it's the biggest game of the weekend. Also for top recruits, they are going to be on hand. I got Sam Spiegelman here. We're going to run down the most important names visiting LSU this weekend. But first, do me a favor, hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. This is the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, so jump on board and hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in national analyst Sam Spiegelman. Sam, is this a 5-star weekend for LSU?
It certainly is. They'll have multiple 5-star recruits in town, many of them from the state of Louisiana, many of them committed, many of them guys that are already trending in the right direction for Brian Kelly and these Tigers. That includes the number 1 tight end in the country, Ahmad Hudson, out of Ruston. He'll be visiting for a second weekend in a row. My prediction is in for LSU with the number 1 tight end in the country, a legacy target. I also have predictions in for return visitors, Javon Vital Jr., an in-state athlete that was in town again last weekend for the Louisiana Tech game. They'll have some of their top commitments in town. Again, Big Rich Anderson, one of the top defensive linemen in the country, out of New Orleans, Edna Carr, Lamar Brown, of course, the number 2 player in the country, their prized face of this class. Don't be surprised if someone like Blaine Bradford is in town. Of course, he'll be there visiting his brother. But of course, he's still in town. LSU is still recruiting him. This is very much the makings of a 5-star weekend for the Tigers.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little quarterback recruiting because we've been talking a lot about LSU in the quarterback position since last weekend. Probably the biggest surprise of the weekend was that Landon Duckworth, South Carolina top 10 quarterback commitment, showed up at LSU. So with that being said, we got another big game this weekend. Any quarterbacks on campus that we're interested in?
Quite a few. As LSU tries to flip Duckworth and try to find a 2026 high school quarterback, their attention is also in this 2027 arms race. As we know, a lot of the top quarterbacks are already off the board of the 2027 class. This weekend, LSU will bring in 3 of their top targets to town. Colton Nussmeier, obviously the electric top 100 quarterback legacy, little brother of Garrett Nussmeier, LSU starting quarterback and Heisman candidate. They'll have Peyton Houston, who will announce his decision on September 15th, this Monday. Predictions from myself, Steve Wilfong, Adam Gorney in for Oklahoma, but he's visiting LSU, a team that has significantly closed the gap in this recruitment over the summer, we're hearing. And then, of course, Elijah Haven, the number 1 quarterback in the Rivals industry ranking, the 5-star from Baton Rouge, the Dunham School, where notable Tigers like Derek Stingley Jr. played at in high school. A top target for Joe Sloan, Brian Kelly, and these Tigers will also be in town. I can say this, even though Oklahoma is trending for Houston, we can almost pencil in that one of these quarterbacks will likely be in the Tigers class when it's all said and done, potentially even 2.
Yeah, and visits make a big impact on some of these recruits. So coming into it, yes, I agree. Peyton Houston trending to Oklahoma. Coming out of this weekend, we will just have to wait and see what he has to say about this trip. So that being said, Sam, who else are we tracking that is of importance that we expect to be on the sidelines for this game?
Yeah, we talk about the 2026 class, and LSU still has some work to do, not only at quarterback, but potentially at running back. And Frank Wilson and the Tigers are going to bring in their top running back target on the board, KJ Edwards out of Carthage, an East Texas powerhouse. He's been committed to Texas A&M since June. He took his OV to LSU. He took his OV to College Station and committed to the Aggies soon after. But LSU has kept its foot on the gas, and he's going to make this visit this weekend. I know that Texas is also making a run at KJ Edwards, who was at one point was leaning toward the Longhorns, but LSU just offered KJ in the spring. He's only been to campus once for his OV, and he still has interest in the program. There's a lot of confidence in Aggie land that KJ sticks in this class, and for good reason. But LSU's not going anywhere, and they're going to keep recruiting KJ until he says no. And this visit this weekend will loom pretty large toward what's to come.
All right. So I know you've had an opportunity to be at some of these LSU Florida games. It's not the biggest rivalry in the country by any means, not on either of these team schedules, but it's pretty heated and it's always a great game. Why is that? Why LSU kind of stacks the sidelines with top recruits for this one?
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to be on the sidelines in Ben Griffin Stadium for LSU Florida. I've been in Tiger Stadium for a couple of these games, and one thing for sure, these games always get a little bit crazy. This is just kind of the tradition in the SEC with some of these. They're not the top rivalries, but they are rivalry games, and both of these teams are geared up for this one. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure on Coach Napier, who, of course, was a candidate for the LSU job once upon a time and made a lot of noise in the state when he was Louisiana's head coach. And when he went to Florida and had some success, LSU fans were paying attention to that and vice versa. Obviously, LSU is 2-0. This is a massive recruiting weekend. We're talking about the 5 stars in town. They have commitments from blue chippers like Trenton Henderson from Pensacola, who's a big part of this star-studded LSU 2026 class. They're going to have top 2027 guys in town from the Sunshine State. This is LSU won a signature win week 1 against Clemson on the road. But these games get weird, and there's to get a big game, to win a big game in this sort of atmosphere would loom large, but it sounds a lot easier than it comes. And LSU is going to have to earn it this weekend. Yeah. And if they do, they'll have a crowd of top recruits on hand to see it.
All right. Well, what's your prediction on the game? Inside Scoop fans, listen up. Whether you're cheering on the Alabama Crimson Tide or the Wisconsin Badgers on September 13th, make sure you do one thing. That's drop by the Whataburger food truck during your tailgate. Get ready to bring home that W early with a hot, fresh Whataburger in hand. And, no matter who comes out on top, when you take your team to Whataburger, you'll feel like a winner with food made fresh and hot every time, 24/7. We'll see you at the game, and we'll see you at Whataburger.
I like how LSU looks. Their defense has, I think, been the theme of the season. Blake Baker has that team clicking. Between the linebacking core of the Weeks brothers and Harold Perkins finding his rhythm back healthy. You love the play of this LSU defensive line, which is retooled in the transfer portal, and some of the young faces in the secondary making plays. I like how this defense looks. I'm also, as you know, Josh, a huge fan of DJ Lagway. So I think that when you have a quarterback like that, and I covered Garrett Nussmeier, these are 2 Texas quarterbacks. I think this could be a high scoring game, and we'll see if one of these. There's a lot of playmakers on both of these defenses. I like LSU. I'll leave it to one of these defensive playmakers to make the game deciding play.
Yeah, I like that. I the more I think about it, I'm kind of surprised with UF's start, and I don't know what to make of LSU's win over Clemson after watching that Clemson-Troy game last weekend. But I do like LSU at home. I do think that something's going on with DJ Lagway. You and I both watched him a lot in high school, and he doesn't look mobile. Have you noticed that? He doesn't look like he's able to move very well, and I think that's going to play right into LSU's hands.
Yeah, that's the thing. And in high school, he was able to overcome a lot of these injuries or, nicks and bruises. He's a tough kid. His grit, I know people might think that's cliche, but it's a real thing. And he's played through serious injuries or injuries that might have kept him out and kept other quarterbacks out. But DJ is, as you know, Josh, not from this planet. And his makeup, if he is one bit healthier, that's enough to maybe sway this game. But I'm with you. He hasn't looked like the DJ that I'm used to seeing. Because if he was at 100%, I think this Florida offense would be clicking at a better pace so far.
Yeah, a little surprised. But LSU fans, you guys talk to us. What is your prediction for LSU Florida Saturday night in the Bayou? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk true freshman of the week. I got director of scouting and ranking Charles Power here. Now, last time at this year, the guys we're about to talk about were taking visits. We didn't know what college campus they were going to pop up on. It was exciting. This year, they're scoring touchdowns in some of the biggest games of the weekend. We're going to break down who have been the best. Now, do me a favor real quick. Hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruit channel. We are the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, so hit subscribe. All right, we're going to start with the biggest game of the weekend, which was Oklahoma and Michigan, and Michael Fasusi. You guys remember him. He was a 5-star this time last year, and his recruitment was a heated battle. And Oklahoma won it. They pulled him out of Texas, ton of competition. Now he's starting at offensive tackle, making an instant impact. Charles, are we surprised at what Michael Fasusi's doing so far?
I don't think you're surprised, but if you're Oklahoma, you're certainly really pleased with how he looked in his first start against Michigan. It's the biggest game of the week, like you said, Josh, and he held up really well. You know, offensive tackle is a position that is very tough to come in and play well as a true freshman. So you're grading that on a steep curve, but even, I think, considering the curve, he played really well. You know, Michael Fasusi came into college as one of the stronger, more physical offensive tackles that we saw in what was a elite offensive tackle cycle in 2025, and you know, he came in just totally ready to play, and really, you know, showed well in his first start. I think if you're an Oklahoma fan, you have to be ecstatic about having what looks to be a star left tackle for the next 3 years as he continues to develop under Bill Bedenbaugh. Michael Fasusi, crazy fact, he just turned 18, so this is a guy who is still like, you know, he's still scratching the surface of what he could be, but the fact he could go out in such a big game and perform so well is really encouraging. And I think if you're Oklahoma, like, they were trying to fix their offensive line going into this year, so I think that's a great early sign for them.
Yeah, and you know, this is Michael Fasusi, I think, is a good example for fans of what a 5-star should look like. The ability to come in, be a franchise type player, because if you're coming in and you're protecting the blind side of John Mateer in game 2 of your freshman year, you're going to be there for a while. You're going to be anchoring that offensive line, and that is what a 5-star prospect can do. There's other great prospects, but not everybody is a Michael Fasusi and can come in and play right away. Well, the guys we're about to talk about are wide receiver DeCorian Moore, Duncanville High School product. He was our number 1 wide receiver in the cycle of 2025. And over the weekend, the Ducks won 69-3 over Oklahoma State. Moore scored a 65-yard touchdown. He's looked excellent. DeCorian Moore, he's doing exactly what we expected him to do, Charles.
Yeah, DeCorian Moore got in the end zone really quickly in that game on Saturday. And I think if you watch that touchdown, that kind of is DeCorian Moore in a nutshell. He smokes the man coverage, has 5+ yards of separation, tracks the ball over his shoulder, makes a defender miss in a super athletic kind of jump cut move. So that kind of shows just the lethal playmaking that we saw from DeCorian Moore in high school. And Josh, you know, we talked about a couple weeks ago when we were going through the true freshman All-American team. And I said DeCorian Moore has, of all of these receivers, has the best shot of having a Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams type of impact as a true freshman. I think we got a little glimpse of that on Saturday. And, you know, I think once Oregon gets in more and more competitive games, he's going to get more targets. I mean, he only had 2 catches. I mean, the game was essentially over in the second quarter. So I think we're going to see more and more targets and more chances for him to make big plays. But we got a glimpse of the elite playmaking ability. Speaking
of an elite playmaker, wide receiver Jalen Cooper, who signed with SMU in that double OT win over the weekend. He had 2 big catches, 89 yards and a touchdown. Now, he wasn't a sleeper. I mean, he was a top 100 guy for us. He signed with SMU, and now he's doing exactly what we expected him to do.
Yeah, Jalen Cooper is one of the more skilled pass catchers in the 2025 cycle. He was a guy who, like you said, Josh, kind of flew into the national radar a little bit from a rankings perspective. You know, he had a really good Navy All-American Bowl showing. I think the rest of the rankings caught up, and he ended up being highly rated. But a guy who we kind of expected to come into SMU and play early just with his route running acumen, his athleticism, and we got a glimpse of that in what was one of the more exciting games of the weekend between SMU and Baylor.
All right, now let's hit on your true freshman of the week. I mean, he might be true freshman of the year when it's all said and done, but edge Chaz Coleman was dominant in Penn State's 34-0 win over FIU. He goes 6'4", 246, very versatile, very athletic, and only a few games in, but Charles looks like a major hit for this Penn State recruiting staff. Inside Scoop fans, listen up. We got to talk Roback, and there's only one way to describe Roback. It's best fit, best feel. For those that aren't familiar with Roback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Now, Roback has released my favorite. It's their new licensed game day collection. Now, with novel polo designs and clean hoodie and a quarter zip design for some of your favorite schools, it is definitely worth checking out. Nobody else on the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Roback's everyday shorts or their Delta Performance pants are the perfect pairing as well. They're super comfortable. I have them. They have an elastic waistband, great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice looking short, but also the comfortable feel for a day on the move. Roback has also been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college football stars past and present, and they're becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across this country. Now, here's what we're going to do. Use the code JOSH on roback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers through the end of this week. Now, it's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with promo code JOSH.
Yeah, he had the most dominant performance of any true freshman in week 2, and Chaz Coleman is probably not a name that a ton of recruiting fans are super familiar with, because this is a guy who was unrated going into his senior year, a guy who kind of came up on the national radar as a senior. He was a quarterback, athlete type, kind of like a linebacker, rushing linebacker, who was a great basketball player, really kind of blew up his senior year, blossomed into this elite athlete off of the edge. And we really liked his upside. He finished number 137 for us. But I'm really surprised at how advanced he is coming into Penn State. This is a guy who we kind of viewed as a developmental type of prospect, but he was totally unblockable on Saturday. Really, his film on Saturday reminded me a little bit of what we saw from Dylan Stewart early last year as a true freshman. So I think if you're a Penn State fan, I mean, it's just an embarrassment of riches on the edge for them. They just had Abdul Carter drafted in the top 3. Deni Dennis Sutton is playing as well as anybody in the country on the edge. And then you have Chaz Coleman, who looks like an athletic freak on the other side. This is a guy who I think could create a lot of problems in the Big Ten as the season goes on. But what he's shown early on is just really kind of eye-popping. So I think if you're a Penn State fan, you need to be ecstatic. And Chaz Coleman is kind of a good example of why we track these senior years for these prospects. He's a guy who nobody knew about going into a senior year. Looks like one of the best freshmen early on. Yeah. So he's a name to certainly follow as the season goes on.
Really cool to watch his development. Now, you guys talk to us. Who do you think has been the most impactful freshman so far? Was it somebody we named, or was it somebody off this list? Either way, let us know. Comment section below. We are tracking college football's highest paid wide receivers. So we got On3's Pete Nakos to join us. His sources have been spot on this. And if you guys remember, Jeremiah Smith is expected to make in the $4 to $5 million range. That's what Pete Nakos has been reporting all offseason. So want to bring him in now. Pete, is there any other wide receivers even making $4 to $5 million a year?
No, Jeremiah Smith is in a class of his own. I mean, he's in a class of his own altogether when it comes to paying college football players. And, you know, after Jeremiah Smith, you look at Ryan Williams at Alabama, and he's probably the closest, but there's a stark difference.
Yeah. And Ryan Williams exploded as a freshman. I'm sure that helped him negotiate heading into his sophomore year.
Yep.
Let's move down the list a little bit. A pair of Auburn wide receivers make it, and not really surprising when you knew that they needed a more explosive offense. They went out and they did what they needed to do at quarterback, getting Jackson Arnold amongst others. So what wide receivers are on this list, and how much are they making, Pete?
Yeah, so they brought in Eric Singleton, the Georgia Tech transfer, and then Cam Coleman, the former 5-star who's been there. They're both making over $1 million this year, and that, you know, that just kind of underlines the need to win this year at Auburn, what they didn't bring in Jackson Arnold, and they felt the need that they needed to walk in a, you know, top 5 wide receiver room in the sport, and that's definitely what Auburn has.
And transfers were hot this offseason. KC Concepcion, who ended up at Texas A&M Aggie, he makes the list. He sure cashed in this offseason in the portal. Yeah,
he's at $1 million, and you keep going down. And, you know, the one thing you always have to remember when you talk about wide receivers in the transfer portal is it's a saturated market. There's only so many, you know, great wide receivers. That's what staffers will tell you. And if you have an opportunity to go get one, you're going to have to probably pay at a premium. All that said, too, that also impacts, you know, like the second or third string guys who are trying to elevate to become a wide receiver one in the Big Ten or something. They're going to see a price jump. And, you know, when you look at salaries across the board in the transfer portal, they're typically a little bit more inflated than if you're bringing in a high school recruit.
Yeah, a little bit more expectation that comes along with it as well. So that being said, when you were digging into some of these numbers, who's a big name or two that comes in at a good value at wide receiver?
Yeah, LSU brought in the Kentucky transfer Barian Brown, and then Oklahoma transfer Nick Anderson. And I think we're going to have to, that's something I'm keeping an eye on to see how they perform on the field. I think we'll have a better idea when SEC play gets started this week. But both those guys are in like the $650,000 range, which is, that's a really good price. They didn't overpay for either one of those guys, got what they wanted. Other guys that jump out, Deuce Robinson at Florida State. He's not in that top echelon, but he's well paid, and he had 173 receiving yards over the weekend. So guys like that are definitely proven to have the bang for the buck.
All right. So when it comes to true freshmen, what's the top dollar range for somebody that just walked on campus catching passes?
Yeah. So you look at a year ago, you have Ryan Wingo. He made about $750,000 as a freshman. That's gone up in this year. And then you look at 2025, DeCorian Moore, number one wide receiver in the 2025 class. Now at Oregon, had a big game against Oklahoma State. He's in that like $700,000 range as well. So it's very clear that if you're going to be a number one wide receiver, you're going to be in the $700,000 range, at least to start. Jeremiah Smith was around there too as a freshman, actually a little bit in the like $600,000 range. So that's kind of what it takes to go get a top line freshman wide receiver.
Yeah. Sure does. So that's it at the wide receiver position. Hopefully, Pete, we can get you on talking a couple other positions and who is the most highly paid at their respective positions. So now you guys talk to me. Who do you think should be the highest paid wide receiver in college football? And who do you think is the most overpaid wide receiver in college football? Let me know. Comment section below.